The scrap steel pipes I bought for cheap single-handedly saved 3,700 lives in an ancient frontier fortress. I'm Chen Yuan. I run a shabby little junkyard, spending every day dealing with scrap metal and old machinery. My life was plain and ordinary. I thought I'd just spend my days collecting junk and paying rent in peace. Until one day, a fully armored girl covered in dust rushed straight into my yard. She walked in and tightly hugged a useless old pipe of mine, her eyes filled with urgency and sincerity. I found it funny at first. I teased her about whether her film crew was shooting scenes at my junkyard, joking that their budget was so tight they had to scavenge scrap metal for props. I casually told her all my scrap iron was sold at a fixed price, weighing by the pound. But she couldn't care less about the price. She only asked for the toughest metal, material strong enough to withstand battering rams and reinforce broken city gates. Her next words left me completely stunned. She said the south gate of Scrapyard Pass was collapsing. Its axles were cracked, its beams broken. Northern D cavalry would break through any moment. If the gate fell, every wounded soldier, elderly civilian, and ordinary person inside would die. I thought she was just overacting at first, but seeing the panic and resolve in her eyes, I finally woke up. The scrap metal that I sold for pennies was her last hope, the only thing that could buy time for innocent people to retreat. I stopped haggling over money. I let her take every usable steel pipe, blade, and nail I had. I never imagined my tiny, overlooked junkyard was linked to a war-torn ancient frontier called Scrapyard Pass. She was General Chen, the defender of Scrapyard Pass. The scrap iron I gave her truly stabilized the collapsing south gate and blocked the enemy's first attack. Soon after, she crossed time again to find me. This time, she didn't need hard steel. She wanted the neglected flashlights, sensor lights, wires, and copper bells piled in my corner. She told me northern dye spies sneak toward the city gates at night, trying to cut the gate bolts and break in from the inside. Ancient torches were too conspicuous, exposing soldiers easily and leaving them defenseless against hidden ambushes. I immediately understood and taught her how to use these modern tools. Sensor lights hung at doorways and corners lit up automatically when someone approached. Headlamps freed up their hands for combat. Most importantly, lights could never stay fixed in one spot. They had to sweep along the wall and shift positions constantly. Otherwise, the glow would become a perfect target for enemy archers. Fearing they'd misuse the tools and get hurt, I drew simple, illustrated guides that required no reading. I set up 3 layers of defenses, iron sheet barriers on the outer layer, warning bells in the middle, and sensor lights deep inside the gate. No enemy spy could sneak past undetected. General Shen tried to leave her personal copper ornaments as collateral, but I refused. I told her there was no rush. We could settle the debt once she returned safely. To me, these were worthless scraps. To them, they were a solid line of defense and a chance to live. I thought my supplies would guarantee safety, but I never expected the huge cognitive gap between our eras would almost lead to disaster. None of the frontier soldiers had ever seen a modern flashlight. A guard named Xu Cheng fixated the light on one spot to get a clearer view of the enemy outside the wall. The bright glow completely exposed his position, and he was shot and severely wounded instantly. I felt overwhelming guilt when I heard the news. They weren't disobeying orders. They simply didn't know. Light can reveal enemies, but it can also draw deadly arrows. Doubt spread through the army. Many claimed my mysterious modern items were a curse and demanded General Shen give the military an explanation. I had no excuses. I could only fix my mistakes. I revised my instruction drawings overnight, adding clear warnings about arrow attacks targeting light sources. I simplified every rule to the extreme. Never fix lights in one place, always move after sweeping, prioritize saving lives over retrieving equipment. I set a strict rule. Any soldier who couldn't understand the illustrations was forbidden from touching the lights. After that, no more soldiers were injured from improper use. My scraps finally became reliable weapons for defending the pass. When General Shen came again, her face was grave. She told me the worst was coming. Northern D had assembled countless battering rams, scaling ladders, and shield chariots for a full-scale siege, targeting the shorter west wall. Scrapyard Pass was on the verge of falling. I didn't hesitate. I emptied my entire junkyard, sorted all usable scraps, and turned them into complete siege defense kits. I grouped high-power flashlights and sensor lights as early warning equipment. Only allowed in hidden doorways and corners, never on open rooftops. Waste tires, wire mesh, and steel bars were laid on the outer wall slopes. They couldn't stop heavy siege chariots, but they could trap wheels and entangle ladders, slowing the enemy's advance drastically. I also reserved strategic gaps for our soldiers to counterattack without being trapped by our own barriers. Thick wooden doors, steel pipes, and iron chains formed my core defense group, propping up city gates and blocking enemy scaling ladders so soldiers wouldn't have to fight with their bare bodies. I turned wooden planks and old carts into simple stretchers, letting untrained craftsmen and ordinary civilians join the defense by transporting the wounded. I also prepared hemostatic medicine and taught her emergency bandaging techniques step by step. With the war urgent, she offered her ancestral military dog tag as collateral, saying it would cover the debt if she didn't return. I turned her down flat. I weigh scrap copper for money, but I never accept collateral for lives, nor will I take a soldier's honor as payment. I told her everything would be recorded on credit, only safe homecomings mattered. I noticed her bleeding arm and forced her to get bandaged. I repeatedly told her my most important rule: always save lives first, retrieve supplies second. The Northern Dai Army launched their final assault. War drums thundered across the battlefield. Shield chariots advanced, battering rams slammed relentlessly against the gates, and scaling ladders covered the city walls. Shuofang Pass was under full-scale attack. General Shen returned to the ancient pass with truckloads of my supplies. Following my illustrated guides, the soldiers defended the city with no fancy tactics or magical weapons, only pure, desperate perseverance. My thick steel pipes propped up the gate, enduring endless blows from battering rams. Tires and wire mesh tangled enemy siege tools, halting their advance. Hidden sensor lights exposed every hidden spy. Wooden doors blocked climbing ladders and saved countless soldiers. Simple stretchers continuously carried wounded soldiers and civilians to safety. They even created a simple signal system with iron chips. 3 strikes for an emergency at the south gate, 2 strikes for manpower shortages at the north wall. No flames, no shouts, just silent, efficient communication to reinforce defenses in time. There were no legendary heroes descending from the sky. Only ordinary people relying on my overlooked scraps held fast to the isolated city. They fought until the enemy's offensive collapsed, forcing the Northern Da army to retreat completely. The battle ended. Shuofan Pass was saved. Covered in scars, General Shen brought me the final count. Every single person in the pass, soldiers, craftsmen, wounded, and civilians, a total of 3,700 people, survived. She delivered gratitude from every defender. Veterans like Lao Zhou and Han Zhong all remembered the kindness of my worthless scraps. They even asked if I could provide sturdier wheels to prepare for future battles. They decided to keep the used steel pipes, lights, and iron sheets permanently on the city wall as official military defenses. I agreed without asking for any payment. My scrap iron sells for almost nothing. Yet these cheap discarded items crossed 1,000 years of time and upheld 3,700 precious lives. General Shen feared the time passage was unstable, that she might one day lose access forever, leaving soldiers unable to operate modern supplies and suffer unnecessary casualties. That's why I required every detail: supply consumption, operational errors, adaptation effects, to keep this kindness alive forever. People say I saved Xiaofeng Pass, but I've never considered myself a hero. I'm just an ordinary junkyard owner. I simply sent the worthless scraps from my world to a war-torn ancient frontier that needed them desperately. Scrap iron has a fixed price, but human kindness is priceless. As long as the gates of Xiaofeng Pass still stand and defenders keep guarding the border, this cross-time debt between us will never be settled. Would you give up everything you have to protect strangers from 1,000 years ago? Leave your thoughts in the comments.